Okay, so we are going live to allow our audience and participant to join. We will give people about a minute and a half to log in before we are going to start our session. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere. Feel comfortable, have a coffee or anything else. And I see people start to log in. And again, we are going to start in about a minute. Hello, everyone. I just remind you that our lines are now open for our attendees to log in. We'll give everyone about 30 more seconds to join our session before we are going to start. So stay tuned. Good morning, everyone here in California. Good afternoon for our friends in Israel. And I guess it's a good mid of the day for the folks on the East Coast. My name is Sharon Vanek, and I'm the Executive Director of the California-Israel Chamber of Commerce. And I'm very happy for the opportunity to have all of you with us for this unique webinar where we are going to talk about the agro-technologies coming from Israel and about the collaboration between the US and Israel in the agriculture industry. For those who don't know, the California-Israel Chamber of Commerce, known as the CICC, is a non-profit organization based in California and in Israel. And our mission is to promote business opportunities, academic research, thought leadership between California and Israel. This session, before we start, I'm just going to give you some information about the logistics of this session. First of all, it's being recorded and it can be available after the session on our YouTube channel, the CICC Tech YouTube channel. It is also being streamed live on Facebook right now. And we invite our attendees to submit their question throughout this webinar using your Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Let me start by introducing the people that are sitting with us today. I would like to start with Adam Bergman, who is going to be the moderator of today's session. Adam is the Managing Director of Ecotech Capital. He is a thought leader in agro-technologies. He's been a good friend of the CICC and the Israeli agro industry for a very long time. And I'll let Adam lead the session of today. Also with us, we have Michal Levy. She is a Senior Deputy Director General at the Agriculture Innovation, the Ministry of Agriculture. Hi, Michal, join us from Israel. Very happy to have you with us. We also have Jacob Marom. He's the Director of Kidum R&D Applications at the Agriculture Research Organization, part of the Volcani Center. He's also joining us from Israel. Hello, Jacob. And the last but not least is Professor Yoram Kapulnik, who is the Executive Director of the BARD Foundation, which is a binational agriculture foundation. And I'm very excited to have Yoram also with us, who was going to tell us more about grant opportunities for R&D in agriculture. I don't want to take more time from our speakers, so I'm going to hand the mic to Adam.
Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate it. And first, thank everyone for joining today. It's great to have so many people with us. So first, welcome and thanks for joining today's webinar on Israel agriculture and technology, news, opportunities, and leadership. As Sharon mentioned, I'm Adam Bergman, and I'm an investment banker who works around ag and food tech and sustainability. So this is a very important topic for me. I'm really excited for this webinar. For those not aware, Israel's at the forefront of food and ag innovation around technology in this area. And having figured out how to use technology to make the desert bloom decades ago. Today, Israeli scientists and entrepreneurs are collaborating on innovations around advanced irrigation and ag biotechnology, alternative protein, digital ag, indoor farming, robotics and automation, and supply chain technologies. Today, we have 3 Israeli scientists and thought leaders who are going to provide insights. In addition to describing the organizations that they're part of, they're going to give some insight around the history of ag tech and food innovation in Israel, the ecosystem that's been created to foster this innovation in Israel, and then some of the new technologies that are being developed today that I think are going to be pretty interesting. I'm hopeful today, when the webinar is done, not only will you learn about these very impressive speakers and their organizations, but you're going to get a sense of what new technologies and innovations are going to be appearing in the near future on farms and store shelves. So with that, let's start the process. Just to give people an overview of how today is going to go, our 3 panelists are going to provide a presentation. And then when that's done, I'll have some Q&A, and then we'll take some Q&A for people if you want to put questions in towards the end. Apologize if we don't get to everyone's questions, but we look forward to getting everyone's thoughts. So with that, we're going to start with Yoram Kapulnik, who is Executive Director of BARD. And in addition to giving an overview of BARD, Yoram's going to give some insight on some of the history around food and ag technology innovation in Israel. So with that, Yoram, I'll turn it to you, and please feel free to start with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Adam. Let me just there. Oh, sorry. Okay. So good morning, everyone there in California, and good evening to those who join us here from Israel. As was mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of BARD, which is the Binational Agriculture Research and Developing Fund. That fund was established 40 years by the 2 governments, by the Israeli and American government, who each of them contribute 50% to the endowment, which we are appreciating nowadays. Now, the partnership is directed to support a mission-oriented strategic and applied research, which is conducted jointly by American and Israeli scientists in all areas of agriculture. The aim of the foundation was to try to help to tackle key agricultural challenges that are common in both countries, in Israel and in the United States. And as I mentioned before, this is a legacy of 40 or a little bit more than 40 years, which we are actually happy to present here today. Now, we are supporting, on our portfolio, we have more than a research grant. We have also fellowships, postdoc fellowships, that can go or come to each one of the countries. We have fellowships for graduate students, which can go and carry some of their research in the other country, in other labs. And we are supporting workshops on cutting edge topics that are being suggested by the scientists, and we allow them to get together for a brainstorm. And recently, I mean 2 years ago, we start to work with academia, to commercial entities, to companies, in order to establish this partnership. Now, we are lucky to have our results from our external review, which that review was carried for the entire 40 years. And it happens that the results actually published a month before the coronavirus. BARD invested more than $300 million over the years in more than 1,300 projects. And 65% of the project generated practical implications to agriculture. 35% of them generated significant environmental impact, and 6% of them were directed to or had a social impact. But the most important, for us, it was we were very happy to see our steering committee decided to analyze only top 20 projects that were the best projects. So those 20 case studies, when they analyzed, resulted in a contribution of $42 billion to the US market economy and $2 billion to the Israeli economy. Of course, as you can see here, a lot of contributions. Some of the companies are global companies, and the contribution can be seen even beyond Israel and the US. And the benefit cost ratio for both countries, for the US, for every dollar that was invested in BARD, contributed more than $8 to the economy of the US. The same goes to Israel. This is 1 to 4. And of course, the market in Israel is very small. Israel is a very small country. And I will spend 2 minutes just to describe you a little bit what we are talking about. We're talking about a country which most of the area is a desert. The size of the country is very similar to New Jersey, or if you want, to Riverside County in California. And the further land, the amount of land that can be cultivated is in the size of Rhode Island, or if you want, Sonoma Valley. And this is a very small country. And those settlers, the newcomers to the country, to this region, they sweat and they had some tears too. Before they were able to see that their efforts became greener. This is the now and then. This is the exact same field. And it took a lot of motivation and effort to turn this dune sand to a very lush green forage. As you see, this is actually peanuts crop in the south part of Israel. Now, in order to carry agriculture, you need soil, water, and people to work on farm. At those days, from the historical perspective, actually it's not historically, we are lacking fertile soil until today. The water is a water scarcity situation. We don't have enough water. And at that time, the people that came to the country, they didn't have not the means, not the effort, not the knowledge, how to carry agriculture there. And on the top of it, we have a massive amount of people that actually immigrate to the country. So we had to feed them. So we say, and for us, it's not just a simple say that necessity is the mother of invention. We have to try our best in order to turn this land to fruitful or to have enough food for this or to the growing nation. You see that in 1955, one farmer was able to produce food to 15 citizens, 15 people. Now, nowadays, one farmer can produce food for more than 400 people, citizens. And the question is what was done in between. So in between, they invested a lot in, here you can see the productivity. This is the rate of improvement in different sectors in Israel. And you can see that the brownish color, which is on the top of the others, this is the agriculture sector, which actually is improving dramatically much better than the other sectors in the Israeli economy. And that's brought about through a technology. A lot of technology was developed in order to bring it to the level that we have today. You're probably familiar with the drip irrigation, where every drop counts, you know, it's known everywhere. However, this was not the only technology. I was thinking about one technology that was a game changer, and I couldn't find. It's a massive amount of small incremental improvement that was done through different varieties, different colors, different markets, growing protocols, and so on and so forth. That actually allow us nowadays to be able to put some orchards in the desert and to bloom the desert, as Adam just mentioned before. But the real secret for that was what we call the golden triangle. This is the tight collaboration between the scientists, the research, the growers, the farmers, and the extension services. This tight collaboration or informal connection was actually the secret behind the improvement, and BARD was there to help this triangle to flow and allow each one of the corners to express or to work to his best. And nowadays, we decided to add the important vertex to the scheme and to put the industry in, because nowadays, without the industry, you will not be able to do it. So from a historical point of view, a lot was done there, and we decided to expand our scope in BARD and to include the academia to industry partnership, those startups that can utilize, can help the innovation flow to the market. Actually, we developed two programs. One of them was initiated already. The other one is waiting for the next government in Israel, which is a task by itself. But this comes through a collaboration between NIFA, the Israeli Innovation Authority, and BARD. And together we are trying to support it. I'm encouraging you to go to our website and to see the fine details about it. But believe it, we call it the BARD Leverage Program, is allowing BARD scientists, those who had BARD in the past, to move forward their findings to the market. And this is not a small money, as you can see. And it can be in a Israeli company, it can be an American company, and the arrangement between them is, you'll be able to see more details in our website. The next field, which I'm very much excited about, this is the food and nutrition. This is a new field for us. This will take us forward to nutrition and health issues, which are very important to our both nations. It's very important what we are feeding our kids with, and it's not the mission or the objective to have a productive field, I think was achieved in both countries. Now we really want to have high quality and functional food, and bringing it to the next level where the microbiome can we can feed our microbiome, and a lot of really innovative ideas that we built in the new program. So as I just said before, our next deadline is September 15. If you really want to explore our program, please pick into our website and try to find the best program or opportunity for you. Our website, this is our address, and this is our email, and if you contact us, we'll help you to learn more about BARD, and we will be very happy to assist you in any objective that you have in agriculture. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thanks, Yoram. That was very good. We appreciate the overview of BARD and as well what has brought Israel from the beginnings of history and driving and leveraging its agriculture and food technology. Next, we've got Dr. Michal Levy, who is from the Israel Ministry of Agriculture, who will give a little overview of what the Israel Ministry of Agriculture is doing, as well as provide some insight on the Israeli ecosystem that's helping to drive innovation in ag and food technologies. So, Michal, to you, please.
Okay, thank you, Adam. And it's really great to be here. And good morning, people in California. Also, if we have people from Israel, so good evening to you as well. So yes, I'm with the Ministry of Agriculture here in Israel, and I wanted to start with the vision of our ministry. So in general, the first 2 points that I'm presenting here are very obvious. They are in the heart of the work of the ministry. We are talking about developing the Israeli agriculture, and of course, ensuring the continuous supply of fresh and high quality food to all the Israeli population. But the reason I brought our vision is because I wanted to present you the third point, which relatively is not necessarily related to Israel, but how Israel and the knowledge that was generated here during the years can be, how can we share it with the rest of the world? So this is one of our vision, to find the way to leverage the advantage that Israel generated to benefit the world. Actually, according to the OECD, Israel is a leader when it comes to build a successful agriculture in harsh conditions. Israel is at the front of the climate changes and always suffered lack of water from its early days. We had no other way. We had to be creative in order to have a great agriculture that we have today. Israel is also investing highly in R&D. And according to the OECD, Israel is one of the leading countries in R&D investment as percentage of the gross domestic product. I'm talking about both governmental investing as well as private. And in addition, I want to point out that last year, 17% of the government's agricultural budget went to R&D, which is a very impressive number. And of course, as Yoram already mentioned, we had to be innovative with water solutions as a necessity. So I'm also presenting the same keys to success as Yoram presented, and I wanted to point out that we are looking at all these partners in a holistic approach. We are looking at the ecosystem as a whole. First, we have our growers. They can point us to the challenges, or to give input on a new technology. And also they have to be creative by themselves in order to deal with new challenges that they are facing every day. We have technology, industry, startups, companies, entrepreneurs. It has to be attached to the ground. The technology has to be very relevant to the needs, to the challenges. And I'm also talking about our extension services. I'm referring to the Training and Professional Services unit at the Ministry of Agriculture. This is an organization of experts in all agricultural fields, in all topics. They are people that are supporting our growers with knowledge, presenting them new technologies, new protocols, how to grow better, presenting them with new crops, giving them classes, etc. And the last part in this success story is our researchers. The research specifically in agriculture in Israel is really attached to the ground, very very implicative, and trying to support in every way the growers. The connection is done through the extension services or directly. And the last point here, is that Israel is a small place. And because it's small place, it's very easy to connect to each other. It's easy to find the right person, even if he's not from your own field. Can be from a different knowledge, and it's very easy to find the right person to collaborate in order to bring new product to the market. So, what do we have today in Israel in terms of startups, in terms of technologies? We estimate, it's very hard to say the exact number, but we estimate that we have more than 450 companies. The interesting part is that these companies covering all aspects of agriculture, relatively from farm to fork, all the way. So we have biotechnology, we have smart, precise agriculture, we have crop protection, aquaculture, machinery, robotics, post-harvest, new crops, and more. And also interesting fact is that more than half of the companies, of the startups, the Israeli startups, were founded in the last 3 years. So we are facing here in Israel a real boom in the last years with entrepreneurship around agriculture. By the way, I hope that all the audience will be able to receive a link to this map, or updated map, actually.
Yes, I'm jumping in, and the map is a hyperlink map. And we can support it, of course, to anyone who has an interest. So we can provide you with a link to the linkable map.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. So if we are looking about investors here in Israel, in the last years, we see an increase in funding in general here specifically in AgTech in Israel. And it's interesting to see that along with the known VCs to invest in agriculture here in Israel, we see new VCs that traditionally did not invest in ag, and now they do. I think it's related, it has two reasons why it happened. First, this can be considered as impact investing, which is very important today to different VCs and others. And also because maybe we see how the high tech is getting into the agriculture, which bring also the VCs, the high tech VCs, also to invest in agriculture in Israel. So here I brought a few, I just picked different startups to present very shortly, each one from a different field in agriculture, and each one, of course, doing something else. So Aquinovo, it's a company that has a supplement, a food supplement for fish. What it does, it prevents the fish from maturation. Because it doesn't reach fast to maturation, it continues to grow, and actually you get, in one pond, you get equal size of all the fish. Agrint is a company that deals with a pest that basically crawl into the stem of palm trees, and without the grower know that it's there, it actually eats the stem from inside and kills the tree. This pest is actually moving from one tree to another, And what the grower can do is basically, spray heavily the field in order to prevent the pest from ruining the field. So Agrint developed a sensor that is being inserted into the stem of the tree, and the stem of the tree, and it alerts the farmer in case that it feels inside the tree. So if the pest starting to spray the specific tree with location in order not to spray the whole field, and also to do it in a very early stage of the pest, the infection. CICC, actually, it's a company that work with a drone fleet to spray, a direct spray in specific locations where it's needed. Equinome, it's a breeding company, but interestingly, they are working side by side with the food industry and ask them to give them the exactly what they need in order to work with specific grain. What the percentage of protein compared to fat, what is the shape of the water inside the whole grain, and etc. And they are trying to breed their seeds in order to fit the specific needs of the food industry. They're working on very interesting crops. They're working on sesame, on quinoa, on teff, which is the Ethiopian crop, and of course others, but these are their main. Aleph Farms, I'll continue quicker. Aleph Farms, they are doing actually cultured meat. What's interesting with them is that they're doing basically a steak and not a hamburger. So it's a very interesting work. They're advancing very nicely. Coopex, they developed a sensor that the farmer can put by himself. He order it online, he gets it by mail, and he install it in his land. It's basically alerts the farmer whenever needs to open the irrigation. And last but not least, MetaMotion, they are developing a robot to, at this point, to pick tomatoes in a greenhouse, but eventually they are planning that this robot will do other work in the greenhouse. To wrap up, Israel is a small country, and we try to be committed to our local farmers and help them to implement new technologies, but also we are looking internationally, and this is in order to share some of the knowledge that was accumulated along the years here in Israel. So thanks again for everyone, and I'm done.
Okay. Thanks, Michal. I appreciate getting the insight of kind of how the Israel Ministry of Agriculture is working and some of the innovations that you talked about. With that, we're going to move next to Jacob Marom, who's the director for the Volcani Center. And in addition to an overview of the work he's doing there, he's also going to provide some additional insight on some of the tech innovation that we're seeing in Israeli food and ag. So with that, Jacob, I'll send it over to you.
Okay. So hello to everyone. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to talk with you. And so I hope you have a good morning to everyone in California and a good evening to us in Israel. I'm working in the Agricultural Research Organization, which is the major research organization for food and agriculture in Israel. And I'm managing basically the business relations. The Agricultural Research Organization is focused on actual implementation of technology, which not only to leave it in papers, but also have it applied. And what I'm going to talk about today is about the trends in the ag tech sector, the basic driving forces that we see on the technology side. The first and biggest driver that we see is the agricultural digitation. In agricultural digitation, there's quite a few different kinds of things that we can see. We can see precision agriculture, which basically is used to call we use it as for outside in the field, treating a segment of a field. We take a field, we divide it into parts, and then we apply different pest management, irrigation management, etc. We have growing enclosed environments, which in this system is one of the biggest and growing fields, is where we grow basically in like a factory. We have a factory, it's closed. Some of it is really all automated and robotic, and it's all, we basically grow our food in the city, in these factories. In this case, today, most of the many greens are done in this type of growing facilities. We believe in the future it will also be different kinds of vegetables and other crops. Third one is precision management of livestock. Different livestock, the more expensive the livestock is, the more it has sensors. A cow could have, let's say, 6 or 7 sensors on one cow, but we monitor them, we manage them. The management is done, again, digitally by decision support systems. After that, something that's less well known, I'll bring an example on purpose here of one of these, is a digital control and management of produce after it's been picked. We want to know it's fresh, we want to evaluate it, and of course, all this is done by automatically. We don't need people involved in the system. And the last and most important maybe is a big change that's adding to everything today is the artificial intelligence. AI is very exciting in every field. It's also very exciting in agriculture because it basically is helping us put this glue together between all these different parts of the digitation of the agricultural food process and put it all together that it can all be managed more and more through automatic systems without any human involvement. So I'll go through some of these just to give people an example of what we're talking about. If we're looking at sensing, we can sense through different kinds of thermal imagery, through hyperspectral imagery, and different kinds of combinations of these kinds of imagery. We can sense lots of things. We can see diseases. Here you can see on the top left, we can see healthy and infected plants when actually with the naked eye, you don't see the difference. Even the right part looks better, but it's infected and we don't see it with the naked eye. We can easily notice it when we use other parts of the visual spectrum. Also, we can use it, and this is an irrigation map that is done by looking at the water stress, by how hot the plants get, because they evaporate less water because they have stress. So we know where to irrigate, where the plant needs more nutrition, the same. This is all done. I promised to give an example, a near technology, a non-destructive diagnostic method for sorting fruits. By a company we developed together with a company called Eshet Eilon. It's now applied to dates, apples, avocados, mangoes. It can see internal rot. We can see sugar levels. We can see, we can sort by oil levels, let's say in avocados and other things. It basically gives us quality control, gives us of these fruit. We can sort them in real time in the sorting machines. Just to give an example of how fast this field is growing, this is the expected growth of indoor vertical farming until 2024 in the United States. As you could see, the growth is really, really incredible. The value of the indoor farming is mainly received because we need between an eighth and tenth of the water. We can almost not use any pesticides or fungicides, etc. We only need to irrigate and give fertilization, and we can reach yields that are higher significantly than in the field. So all this enables this to be a driving force for the future. Just to give an example how some of them look, many different types. All of them are different, but they look more or less like this. And it's really exciting trend. The next thing, fermentation. If we go on to fermentation, we can ferment microorganisms, or we can ferment cells of animals. We can ferment cells of plants. Each one has their own need. These are some examples of how it looks like. This is how it looks in a lab. This is what it looks in a commercial fermentation system. And this is an output that is a commercial grade output of, in this case, resveratrol. I'll show it at the end. But why do we have this? When we see we have meatless alternatives, people want to eat meat, but we don't have the moral problems we are associated with killing animals and even growing them in captivity in these mass structures. So basically, meatless alternatives are growing, again, a very strong growth. This is a big driver of growth, as we can see here in this graph. According to Barclays, the alternative meat market may be worth $140 billion in the next 10 years, certainly a big growth market. And this all needs to be fermented and maybe used in other ways, but we can ferment certain cells. In the microbiome space, today we take out fungi or bacteria from the microbiome of animals, people, plants, and sometimes some of it is used topically. If we take from plants, we can use it topically on the plants and they'll still have an effect. So they become into being biological control agents. The whole microbiome space is super exciting. Okay, so this is just another example. I'll show one of the products we developed with in this case, it was a startup acquired by Bayer Crop Science. Bayer Crop Science joined up with Koppert, and they put out a new product in the market this January, developed by the Agricultural Research Organization in Israel, though it's not written here, called Noli. It's basically much more healthy for us, and it's a yeast that is edible for us, but it basically is a biocontrol agent that is unharmful to people or animals. I promised to have the example. We are talking about food additives that can be grown. For example, this is an example of using grape cells to get the resveratrol and added a value of, let's say, red wine without having the alcohol. Some people say that's a loss, but on the health system, it's important. So this is a startup, again, originated in the Agricultural Research Organization. And just to give small examples, today cannabis, of course, everyone is trying to grow cannabis or maybe enjoy the cannabis in other ways, but we might not need to grow the plant. We can just take the cells that are at the end of the flower of the plant and grow them in these fermentation plots, and we won't need the rest of the plant. It will be much more effective. That's the trend of the fermentation process that we see. Big driving force. Next driving force, a third huge driving force is genome editing, and goes with epigenetics. I'll not get into epigenetics today because of time. I was told to take it down. So we're going into the genome editing space. We all know that there are tools today that enable us to manipulate genes. Basically, we've been manipulating genes for thousands of years. We know that Jacob has been putting crosses between different kinds of lambs. We know of plants that have been bred together. It's called natural breeding. Basically, people have been breeding plants together. We got lemons, we got oranges, lots of things from these cross breedings, and they're very useful for us. But this huge tool of editing genes is very frightening. And then when the GMO came in, this became frightening because basically you can take a gene from, let's say, a mouse and put it into a plant. And it seems very frightening and unnatural. So in the gene editing space today, using the CRISPR-Cas technology, we can do this editing without leaving any trace of a foreign genome. In the past, any gene editing, even if you do the same genes from a plant, we'd leave a foreign genome of the agrobacterium or whatever medium was used. Today, it can be done without any foreign genome, and therefore we can take only genes from a tomato in a tomato and it's considered a non-GMO but we have a huge tool that we can reach very nice results. I'll give some examples of this. First of all, just to show again, a huge driving force for growth, a good investment space. I'll give one example here. We again, a startup, a very big startup in the ARO, basically that makes chickens that we give only females and not have any males. We only have layers, when today layers give 50% male, 50% female, all the males are basically killed. That means billions of chicks around the world are being slaughtered every year. And this is the biggest moral issue, I think, of the agri-food today. So we have presented a solution where the hens will lay only females and only layers, and there will be no need for killing the males. Okay, that's just an example of the strength of this tool. The third one is the smart chemistry in nano. Now, chemistry is becoming amazing. The things that people are able to do when we're managing to put in the digitation into the chemistry management, and together with the strong tools that are available today, many things that have not been able to be done before. One of these is just an example using Janus particles, a particle that's on one side has these properties, and on the other hand, the other properties. Usually a compound, a molecule, not a molecule, a compound has a structure that makes it have the same properties all over. In the Janus particles, the particle has only a property to one side. It can be hydrophobic on one side and hydrophilic on the other side. This enables us to encapsulate many things and make lots of different mediums. That's just one example of the smart chemistry. In this case, encapsulated fungi spores that are pathogenic to the moths that attack certain crops. And basically, they're in this medium, like you see here. A single cell is kept as a spore inside this oil. After they're eaten by the moth, they are getting into the stomach and open up and start doing what they do, and the moth dies. This is, of course, unharmful to anything else, not even to other insects. It's not harmful to humans in any way, and it's very, very efficient. Just to give an example, why is it different from encapsulation, micro-encapsulation or nano-encapsulation available today? Because even a nano-encapsulation would have hundreds of these cells and not a single cell encapsulated. And when we have hundreds of cells, if we have hundreds of spores, they wake up and start eating each other. And therefore, they're not it's not an efficient use. Another big driver is the sea. Most of the world is covered by ocean. The ocean is generally not explored. And in agriculture, we're still hunting. Okay, we're basically going to the sea and fishing. Fishing is hunting. We used to hunt for cows, now we grow them. We used to hunt for chickens, today we grow them. So one of the things is growing basically fish. As you can see, salmon, when it's been domesticated in the beginning of the 90s, as you see, this is the yearly growing of aquaculture, basically in closed systems. In captivity, you can see the salmon production has boomed. We've been being able to buy cheap salmon in a good system without having any harmful chemicals in the salmon, and it's been a very smart, a very good move. In Norway, it's its second biggest export business after oil is salmon. In Israel, we domesticated two different fish, both the sea bass and the sea bream. This is growing of sea bass and sea bream in captivity, the blue, compared to fishing. As we can see, the big boom in the economics of the Mediterranean basin in these two fish after we domesticated them. We're working also, of course, on different compounds, on algae, using algae for packaging, using different systems for health. This is a very exciting, the sea is an exciting field. And the last driver that I want to talk about is the natural wellness and compounds market. Basically, consumers want to see chemicals substituted by natural compounds. underlying this drive is, let's say, sometime intuitive understanding that the human body is situated to natural agreements that human beings have been eating since they were monkeys. So we are used to it, and the body knows how to take care of it and destroy it. And relatively, when we have synthetic chemicals, sometimes the body doesn't know how to deal with them, so they have very strong side effects. This is one side of the natural compounds. The other side, basically, is we can use it to subsidize even natural compounds like sugars. Sugar in the quantities we're eating it is one of them is very unhealthy, nitrates, fat, of course, synthetic preservatives. So one thing, we want to reduce labels, reduce the problem, and have better, healthier food. And on the other hand, we want to defend ourselves and be more healthy. I call it active wellness compared to passive wellness. Basically, we want to have natural compounds that defend us. They can defend. We develop compounds that defend the brain. Basically, the results with the Sheba Hospital, we see on brain trauma and on Parkinson, amazing results. Fatty liver, again, we developed for colitis, for dealing with other examples. Just to give an example, we all know the cannabis markets, I just mentioned it before. It's basically thousands of years, man have been using cannabis to treat diseases. Basically there was a jump. It's being used on humans without really understanding the active compounds for treating lots of diseases, from sleep disorders to pain and other, of course, many myriad diseases that are in development today. Again, saw the results. It seems to be very strong compounds with a lot of capability. Just to show another example, we use different types of the peanut to create treatment for peanut allergy. Another natural compound. This is a very strong driver. So just to sum up, we have 6 huge drivers. Each one is pushing value. This value creation is driving us and driving investment into this field. And as you saw the graphs, we jump on the train, we go up the graph. Okay, that's basically a part of our strategy. We're working very strong to have centers in each of these 6 driving forces of technology. And thank you all for the opportunity again to talk to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Jacob. Appreciate your insight. It was very helpful. We don't have long, but we'll try to do a couple questions before we run out of time. So Yoram, I'll start with you. What areas of the food and ag sector do you believe Israel has a competitive advantage? And how do you think Israel will be able to leverage these advantages to make the next generation of technology leaders in the food and ag sector?
Okay, this is a very wide, very tough question, and the answer is, I'll do it very shortly. You're probably familiar with a couple of the advantages that we have in Israel, one of which we just mentioned along this webinar is the advanced innovative ag sector, which we have. But on that, we have to add, and Jacob mentioned it, another advantage here. This is the IT technology. And IT technology is a very, the information technology is very developed, and it's really naturally kind of combination between or bringing the IT technology to agriculture. That would be probably the next vector to push both sides, the agriculture and also the IT technology. That also will contribute to precision agriculture. And I will leave it here. I really want to mention another thing, which is kind of obvious to us. Israel is very good in water technology. Any other sector, but you know, water technology, water quality and management are very well. If you'll add in and you'll bring in the IT technology to water treatment, then I think that we'll achieve much better management in almost every capacity. And that's something which is, we were talking about the drone, and we were astonished about the idea of having delivering mail to your home by a drone. But believe it or not, we have here a startup company in Israel that they have a drone who's actually picking oranges, and they can do the oranges pick 24/7, and they don't have a coffee break, and they don't have a lunchtime, and they can work there. I mean, what I can see that using the advantages that we have already in Israel and bringing it to things that we have some experience with, that will give the great leverage.
Thanks, Yoram, and I agree with you. I think water is an area that the rest of the world needs to follow Israel's lead in terms of its use, and recycling is a huge component. And I'm also a believer that one of the things ag as a legacy industry really is struggling with is how to use IT more effectively, whether it's AI, data analytics, machine learning. I think all of that, which is going to be developed in other industries, can be brought to ag to really drive efficiency throughout the whole supply chain. So thanks for your thoughts. Michal, so I think for me, one of the things I found most interesting is the Israeli government has been providing funding to support its food tech innovation through what is recently done as the Sparks Fund, a $100 million investment fund by one of these venture firms in the US, Finisterre, and some players over in Israel, strategics and financial firms. Why did the government decide to create the Sparks Fund? And will the government look to create a similar fund for ag tech as well?
Okay, this is a great question. Actually, I think that the Israeli government tried to look on areas that are outside of the center of Israel. Israel is very condensed in its center, you know, high population, and most of the high tech and other companies are located in the center of Israel, and there are areas that are less populated and they have great advantages. So I believe that, you know, we saw that the food tech industry is starting to rise in Israel, and it's also was found that up north, in the north area of Israel, there are researchers that are working in the food tech area. And the idea was to build a center, a national center for research, for food research, combined with small industrial park, and you know, to bring startups and to have their big incubator, and this is the Sparks that you are talking about, but also to build there a facility, infrastructure for all these companies to stay and to build a local ecosystem for food tech. Regarding your second part, if we are considering to do the same with ag, so the answer is yes, certainly. And we already actually started to do a brainstorming regarding that. And the first step that we are doing now is to find our anchors in order to create a system like that, a location that will combine startups and create a local ecosystem. You need to have something already there, a research center, good growers, university, something that will be, you know, something to start from. And so we are working in that direction, and I hope that we'll have good news, not in the short term, and not in the long term. Excellent.
So we have very little time, but Jacob, I'll try to get the question in if we get a short answer. So Israel has been able to become one of the leading global technology centers with R&D and other technological operations with leading US companies, Applied Materials, Intel, Facebook, Google. Do you envision something similar occurring with international food and ag companies making Israel a leading R&D center?
Definitely, I see this as a trend. I see the huge companies see that they need to have innovation. They need to build new unlocks to value. And the good thing is that there's still enough inefficiencies in the systems that things are being done, that the new models now coming in seem to unlock huge amounts of value. These are basically involving different funding systems and investors together with big corporates and research organizations. And these three together in different models are seeming to be very efficient. The food system is different from IT in one very defining aspect, that you cannot have a startup that goes all of a sudden global by itself. You have to, food has to be sold through commercial selling chains, and the big chains control this market. And the small companies at the end need to work with these big companies. We have 80 or so huge corporates that dominate the world food market, and big startups and companies have to understand that we need to collaborate. The giants need the other companies, and they need the startups, and they need the innovation, that they can't do that stuff. They know today that they can't do that. They know they need others, and that's a big change in the last decade or last 5 years that we got even stronger. The other institutes know that they can work through this system, and the startups now understand they have to collaborate with the giants. And this has now become a very exciting time for collaboration.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank all the panelists for their interesting presentations and their comments. I'm sorry we couldn't go longer because I know people have lots of questions. I appreciate everyone joining today, because I think having everyone on here learning about what's happening in Israel, innovation for food and ag, is fantastic. And I'd like to throw out there, our plan is to hold another webinar later this year to focus on some of these innovative Israeli food and ag tech companies, so you can learn more about them. With that, I'll send it back to Sharon.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you to all of our speakers today. It was really interesting and amazing to learn about all those efforts, first of all by the government, and then through the industry, and of course the support to the startups. And as Jacob said, I'm just going to echo the collaboration between all of this, or how Yoram called it, the golden triangle. It's essential, and I think everybody nowadays understand it. And this is why we put together this kind of webinar, and Adam mentioned our next upcoming webinars to show the opportunities and to see how we can build that maybe bridge or channel or platform, call it whatever name you want, to bring together the different stakeholders within the industry to talk to each other, to work together. And there are several amazing grants by the US and the Israeli governments working together. One of them, of course, is through the BARD Foundation, which we heard earlier from Yoram. There is another opportunity, and actually there is a call for companies now through the BIRD Foundation, which is a similar binational foundation. The deadline for that grant is on September 1st. We are here to provide any information that you need about those grant opportunities. If you need us to help you find maybe a partner from the other side, never mind if it's an Israeli or an US company, to work together and submit your proposal for these amazing grants. I want to thank again to our audience that sat with us throughout the last hour. Again, this session is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. If you need any more information, if you need information about any of the companies that were mentioned here earlier, we are here to provide you those access to the companies. You can always reach us at info@ci-cc.org. There are some more questions on the Q&A. Unfortunately, we cannot answer all of them, but we will try to privately answer the questions later on through emails. Thank you so much, everyone, and I'm looking forward to keep working with you in the near future. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.